Fire up those resumes, boys. We're working for Unilever. Hey, what's going on, guys? Mike Gastin here. And today we're going to talk about Unilever. They just came out with an announcement that they're going to put the 4-day work week to the test. They're going to start doing the 4-day work week. Now, here's the thing. Unilever employs 155,000 people across the globe. And no, this 155,000 group, this cohort, is not going to the 4-day work week. This is an experiment that they're going to run in New Zealand, of all places. Now you say, okay, well, they must have manufacturing. They must have a lot going on in New Zealand to give this a try. No, they've got 81 employees. They've got 81 employees in their New Zealand offices. And mainly these are marketing people. These are salespeople and even some distribution people. Now, Unilever is a massive company, giant consumer goods group. They own brands like Ben & Jerry's ice cream. They own Dollar Shave Club. They own just a host of companies. They started in the early 1900s. It was a merger between a Dutch margarine company, and the Lever soap company. It's kind of a strange merger. Why would a margarine company and a soap company merger? But the reason that they came together is the technology, the chemistry is the same. They deal in oils and fats.
Tonight, we make soap.
That's how Unilever got its start. And since then it's become massive. I think they did about 54 billion euros in revenue turnover last year. Now, for those of you that speak bald eagle, that would be about 65 billion US dollars. That's a lot of bread. That's a lot of bread. Here's the thing that's kind of interesting about this. I think this is a fascinating experiment. I'm going to be watching it closely. I'm curious to know if they can turn a profit. Now, one thing that I recognized when I ran a company, I had employees, is that, and I think this is true for all of us. This just wasn't my employees, but it's just something I observed as an owner, that work is like oxygen, and it will fill the container that it is put into. Meaning, if you say, hey, this project has a deadline of Friday, it's Monday morning, we've got to get this out the door Friday. Well, lo and behold, the work will take a full week and it will ship on Friday. But if you take that same job and say, no, it's due on Tuesday, well, lo and behold, the job will ship on Tuesday. That we tend to spread things out. I don't know that we do this consciously, but we kind of fill the time that we have. And I'm curious to see what happens when you compress the work week. Does the same amount of work get done? Can we be more efficient in a shorter period of time? Is it easier to sustain a heavier pace knowing you're going to have a 3-day weekend versus a 2-day weekend? So it'll be kind of interesting for me. Now, the thing about it is mainly the people in New Zealand, these are going to be more kind of professionals, right? These are marketing people, sales people. Now, you could argue, our marketing people and sales people are very professional. And I can say that because I've done both marketing and sales for most of my career. But the fact of the matter, these are white collar jobs mainly. There's some distribution jobs in the mix here, but this is not like hardcore manufacturing. This is not some factory in India that is, putting together a product from raw materials, doing some chemical formulating, and so on. This is going to be white-collar workers. Can they be more effective and more efficient on a 4-day work week? Now, look, we're all kind of working on Corona time here anyway. We're all working from home. We're working remotely. We're not going into the office as much as we used to. We're Zooming in. And my hunch is that a lot of us are not putting in 40 hours anymore anyway. We're not going to the office and putting in 40 hours. Now, there's a part of me that's a little reticent about this. There's a part of me that's a little hesitant, and I want to get to that in a minute. And that has more to do with the government's reaction to these kinds of things. But there's a part of me that is actually excited about this. And I was going to touch on this a second ago when I said there's something that's really interesting to me. With the advent of free markets and the advent of a capitalist society, you started to see workers become more and more specialized in the work that they did. In the old days, you might have somebody that was a weaver, and they knew all aspects of weaving. They did all parts of it. They might gather the materials. They might prepare the fibers to be woven. They might build the looms and work on the looms and so on, but they would handle every aspect of the weaving process. But what happened in the free market is things started to become more specialized. In that whole weaving process, you have one group of people that were then dedicated to just harvesting the materials. It became more efficient to do that. You get more efficiency, you get more cost reduction, you get more speed, more volume when people became more specialized. Now, from a financial perspective, this is great for the consumer. We can get access to cheaper goods and services because we all have become more and more specialized. But the downside of this is it creates a dehumanizing aspect to work. And the specialized work can be a bit monotonous. It can be boring. Think of somebody working on a manufacturing line who's holding a rivet gun, and their job is just to plug in a rivet to this thing that gets put in front of them every 3 seconds, just boom, boom, boom. The other problem with this is you start to get what is recognized by historians as wage slavery. I know it's those are scare words, wage slavery. But in the old days, the good old days, I don't know if they were really good, but in the old days, people didn't necessarily trade time for money. You did a job, you made an income, but you were involved on different levels. You might have been a proprietor, you may have been a merchant, you may have been a farmer, so on, or working in one of those areas. You did have people in the professional classes. These would be doctors, these would be attorneys, these would be accountants. But for the most part, people didn't go into a job. They didn't give 40, 60, 80 hours and get $2, $3, $4, $10 in return. With the specialization of work and with the more free market capitalist economy, you start to see wage slavery. This is this kind of scary term for people going into a job, doing a monotonous job and getting paid for their time. You're trading your time for money. It's kind of a sort of slavery. And I don't want to lessen the impact of true slavery, but this is the phrase that was used in the early mid-1800s as scholars and academics and observers started to see this trend coming about. This is what they labeled it, wage slavery. This was not always the case. Not everybody went off to a job like you and I do. Now, the reason that I find this interesting is because what this is doing potentially is reversing the equation to not say, I'm paying you for 40 hours of your time. I'm paying you for an outcome. And I'm willing to bet you can do that outcome in a shorter period of time. This is the gamble. Unilever and companies like it are saying, I think that you can actually produce the same amount of value for the company because I need you to produce value in a shorter period of time. And so I'm willing to actually pay you the same, give you the same benefits and so on, in return for getting that value out of you that I need. It's not so much that I want to captivate you, that I want to enslave you for 40, 50, 60 hours a week. We don't need you sitting there kind of twiddling your thumbs. We don't need you checking your Facebook to pass the time. We don't need you trying to drag out your smoke break or your lunch break because you feel brain dead and frustrated and discouraged. We're happy for you to get this work done and get it done faster. And if you can do that, we'll give you the same amount of money because you're creating value for us. It's kind of an implicit recognition of this idea that the worker should be creating value and should be rewarded for that value. And I'm no Marxist. I'm not saying that if it weren't for the worker, there would be no wealth in the world. That's just a ridiculous thought. The worker has to create some value. And to compress the work week and to say, I don't need you here for 40 hours. I'm not trying to trade time with you. I'm trying to trade an outcome. I think that's a good thing. In fact, if you've ever worked in sales, you know that you're incentivized based on what you can produce. If you can get out there and close an account, the boss really doesn't care how many hours it takes you. They don't care if you're golfing, fishing, or yucking it up on the internet. They want you closing deals.
Always be closing. Always be closing.
The thing that I am concerned about, to wrap this up, I am concerned about this becoming more of a human right. We've seen the government through the ages get involved in labor. The minimum wages, minimum working hours, we see unionization and people fighting back saying, hey, I should have a weekend, I should only have to do 8 hours. The government comes in and says everybody's allowed a half-hour lunch break. The government loves to regulate this stuff. And if this becomes a thing where it becomes a human right, that you get the right to only have to work 4 days a week and the 3 days doesn't matter, then what you've done is you've stripped this innovation by Unilever, this test of its efficacy. You've stripped it of its potential potency, because what you're now doing is saying, I only have to work 4 days a week, and I'm only gonna work 4 days a week. You've taken the equation away from value creation within a set period of time, and then reoriented it back to just trading time for money. So I hope that the governments of the world can keep their greedy little hands off of the outcome of this experiment. I'm very curious to see what Unilever is able to accomplish. I'm curious to see what they learn from this. I have an intuition that people are going to be just as productive. And I think this is going to work in other sectors. It's going to work in the white collar sector. I think it's going to work in manufacturing and the blue collar as well. There's a lot of technical innovations that allow the worker in a blue collar environment to be more effective. You can do more with fewer people. You've got some automations, you've got equipment and processes that let people get a lot more work done with a smaller team. I think it's going to work. So my gut is that this is going to work, and I like the potential to reorient the working relationship between the laborer and the company around value creation. We'll pay you for the value that you create. I think that's just a phenomenal thing. That is the free market. And get rid of this kind of wage slavery that is demeaning and actually not that productive for anybody involved. Unfortunately, I think the governments are going to have a hard time keeping their hands off this. I think that we as people are going to have a hard time not viewing this as just trading less time for more money. We're going to be very transactional about it. We're going to insist that the government regulate this, that this becomes the law for everybody. And we're going to miss out on a great opportunity. It'd be great for a company to say, hey, look, we offer a 4-day work week. This is an incentive. This is a benefit of working for our company. But I think over time, and maybe a short period of time over the next 5-10 years, this is going to become the norm because it's going to become regulated. Let's hope that's not the case. But what are your thoughts on this? Do me a favor, throw me a comment down below. I love the comments on this. What do you think about this? Have you heard of wage slavery before? Do you think the 4-day work week can work? Are you in a situation where do you feel like you're just trading time for money and you want to get out of it? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you haven't done so already, throw me a like on this. It lets the YouTube algorithm know that this is content we're sharing. And please, if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Guys, I love you all, and I'll catch you in the next video.